Arsenal are the best team in England right now, but Sunday might be the one game they lose. And the strange part is, it has nothing to do with form, because on paper, this should be simple. Arsenal beat Manchester City 5-1 this season. They are 9 points clear at the top of the league. They are playing with confidence, control. So why does this final feel different? Why does it feel dangerous? Because when you actually break this game down properly, tactically, psychologically, structurally, there is something most people are completely missing. And once you see it, it changes how you look at this final entirely. So stay with me on this, because by the end, I think you will look at tomorrow's final very differently to how most of the coverage is presenting it. Tomorrow afternoon, 4:30 kickoff, Wembley Stadium, Arsenal versus Manchester City, Carabao Cup final. And what I want to do today is not give you the standard preview. I am not going to run through both squads, tell you who is fit and who is not, and leave you with a vague feeling that Arsenal should probably win. What I want to do is break down the structural reality of this fixture, the tactical picture that most of the mainstream coverage is genuinely missing. The specific reasons why Arsenal's advantages tomorrow are more concrete than people are acknowledging, and the one honest vulnerability that this Arsenal side still carries into every major occasion. Right, let us start with the actual reality of what is happening here, and I want you to keep something in the back of your mind as I explain this, because it becomes critical when we get to the tactical section. Manchester City are arriving at Wembley in a state that nobody would have predicted at the start of this season, eliminated from the Champions League on Wednesday night, 5-1 on aggregate against Real Madrid. Their season in Europe is finished, their Premier League title challenge is functionally over, trailing Arsenal by 9 points with the run-in approaching. What that means, and this is important, is that tomorrow is not just a trophy opportunity for City, it is the last credible chance they have to rescue any meaningful silverware from a campaign that has deteriorated significantly in the second half of the season. Now, I raise that not to make an emotional point about pressure and desperation. I raise it because that context shapes every single tactical and personnel decision Pep Guardiola makes tomorrow. When a manager is working from a position of necessity rather than confidence, his options narrow, his risk appetite changes, and in Guardiola's specific case, there is an additional layer worth acknowledging. His future at Manchester City beyond this summer is genuinely uncertain. Reports suggest he will use the upcoming international break to decide whether to honour the final year of his contract. I am not going to dramatise that, but I will say this: when a manager's future is in question, the players in that dressing room know, and that awareness, however subtle it might be, is a factor in how a squad approaches a major final just 3 days after a humiliating European exit. We will come back to that Wednesday night specifically, because what happened in that stadium matters far more to tomorrow's result than people are giving it credit for. Arsenal, by contrast, arrive in a completely different psychological state. 2-0 against Bayer Leverkusen on Tuesday, Champions League quarter-finals confirmed for the third consecutive season. Before that, a clean 2-0 win over Everton in the Premier League. Their last 5 results tell the story of a team operating with clarity, consistency and growing belief. No crisis, no noise around Arteta, no uncertainty about direction. Just a group of players who know exactly what they are doing and why they are doing it. And here is the point I want you to hold on to, because it completely reframes how you should watch tomorrow. Arsenal play tomorrow with nothing to lose. In the truest sense of that phrase, the 9-point lead does not change if they lose this final. The Champions League quarter-final against Sporting does not change. The trajectory of this squad does not change. Manchester City, on the other hand, play with everything to lose. That asymmetry is not a minor psychological footnote. It is a structural factor that influences how both squads manage the pressure moments in the second half, how individual players respond when the game is in the balance, and how each dugout approaches the match from a decision-making standpoint. This detail matters more than people realise, and it connects directly to what I am about to show you in the tactical breakdown. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, let me get into the tactical reality, because there are specific structural details here that deserve far more attention than they are getting, and the most significant one has almost nothing to do with Arsenal. It is about Manchester City's defensive situation, something that when I first looked at it properly this week genuinely surprised me with how little coverage it is receiving. City are arriving at Wembley without Josko Gvardiol, who has been out since the beginning of the year with a tibial fracture. They are also without Mark Guehi, their January signing, who is cup-tied, having represented Crystal Palace earlier in this season's competition. Their 2 primary options for the left centre-back position, both unavailable simultaneously now, Take a moment with that and hold that thought, because in about 60 seconds, I am going to show you exactly why those two absences sit at the centre of Arsenal's most dangerous attacking weapon, why this collision is the actual tactical story of tomorrow's final. Because when you place that defensive absence next to what Arsenal bring in terms of set-piece delivery, it stops being a standard injury update and becomes something structurally quite significant. Arsenal are the Premier League's most dangerous set-piece side this season. The structure of their delivery, the movement patterns their players run from corners and free kicks, the aerial presence of Gabriel and Saliba in the penalty area, this is not a marginal weapon. It is a primary attacking mechanism that has produced a substantial portion of their goals this campaign. And the defensive void City are carrying into Wembley tomorrow sits directly in the path of that weapon. Think about what that means in practice. City will be defending set pieces with a defensive line that has not worked together in this exact configuration for any extended period. Their organisation from corners, their zonal marking responsibilities, their aerial defensive hierarchy, all of it has to be rebuilt around personnel who are not the first choice options for those specific roles. That is a significant organisational problem, and Arteta knows it. Arsenal's set-piece coach knows it. Every single corner Arsenal win tomorrow will be delivered with that specific vulnerability in mind. This is the part most viewers have missed entirely. Gabriel has scored against City before from exactly these situations. Saliba is a genuine aerial threat. The delivery quality Arsenal can produce late in swinging balls, short corner combinations that pull defenders out of position before the ball is whipped back in, is the best in the country right now. In a tight cup final, a match that may well be decided by a single goal, this is not a marginal tactical detail. It could be the decisive mechanism of the entire game. And it is getting almost no attention in the mainstream previews. Everybody is talking about Haaland. Everybody is talking about Saka. Those are legitimate conversations, and we will get to both. But the structural collision between Arsenal's most lethal weapon and City's most significant weakness is the actual tactical story of this fixture. And every Arsenal supporter watching tomorrow should be watching those set-piece moments like a hawk. But here is where everything shifts, because there is another layer to this tactical picture that changes how you read the midfield battle entirely. Right, the midfield, because this is where the tempo of tomorrow's match gets decided. And this is where I want you to pay particular attention, because one player's role in this final is almost completely misunderstood. And it has a direct bearing on whether Arsenal control the match or whether City find a way back into it. Arsenal's double pivot of Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi has become one of the most effective midfield combinations in European football in the second half of this season. And I want to be precise about why, because Zubimendi's role in particular is genuinely misunderstood if you just glance at the numbers. He is not a traditional defensive midfielder. He is not simply sitting in front of the back four and putting his foot in. What Zubimendi does is function as a press trigger and positional screen simultaneously. He identifies the moment to step out and engage City's build-up, forces the ball backwards, and by doing that consistently, he compresses the time and space that Haaland needs to receive the ball in dangerous areas. If City cannot progress through midfield with any fluency, Haaland's effectiveness as a focal point is significantly reduced because he is spending his energy receiving long balls under pressure rather than running in behind a disorganised defence. Meanwhile, Rice operates with the freedom that Zubimendi's screening provides. He can carry the ball higher, engage in transitions, and be the progressive force in possession. In the 5-1 win over City in February, this combination was absolutely central to why Arsenal controlled the match so completely. City could not find a way through the midfield structure, and every time they tried to go direct to Haaland, Gabriel and Saliba were positioned and ready. City will likely line up with Rodri and Tijani Reinders in the pivot tomorrow. Both were rested against Madrid and will be physically fresh. That is their genuine midfield threat. Rodri's ability to control tempo, slow the game down and create pockets of space for the forward line is elite level. If he is allowed to operate without pressure in central areas, City become a different team. Which is exactly why Arsenal's press from the front, starting with Gyökeres, needs to be disciplined and sustained from the first minute. And that actually brings me to Viktor Gyökeres, and a point that I think is worth making clearly, including one honest uncertainty that I have not been able to fully resolve in my own analysis this week. He has been outstanding in the second half of this season. His link-up play, his pressing from the front, his hold-up work, all of it has visibly improved since January. But tomorrow will be his first appearance at Wembley, and it will be his biggest occasion in an Arsenal shirt. That is not a criticism of him. It is simply a variable that any honest analyst has to acknowledge. And if I am being truthful with you, this is the one area where I have a genuine uncertainty going into this match. How a player responds to the specific atmosphere and weight of a major cup final when they have not been in that environment before is genuinely unknown until you are in it. The question for Gyökeres tomorrow is not whether he is good enough. He clearly is. The question is whether his pressing structure from the front, specifically targeting City centre-backs in the opening exchanges, is precise enough to set the defensive tone Arsenal need. If his press is well organised and disruptive, City build from deeper and under pressure, Arsenal control territory. If it is slightly loose in the early stages, Rodri gets the ball with time, City progress and the match opens up in a way that suits them considerably more than it suits Arsenal. Watch the opening 15 minutes specifically, because how Gyökeres approaches those first exchanges will tell you a great deal about how the rest of the match unfolds. Now, Eberechi Eze. And this is important because I think the framing around him is almost entirely wrong. And once I explain why, I think it changes how you watch his performance tomorrow entirely. Martin Odegaard is doubtful for tomorrow with a knee injury. Eze is expected to take the number 10 role, and the narrative is universally presented as Arsenal being weakened, as though Eze is simply a deputy stepping in out of necessity. Like this is a problem Arteta has to manage. I want to challenge that framing directly because I do not think it holds up analytically. Odegaard's role in Arsenal's system is primarily about possession recycling, spatial awareness in tight areas, and the composure to play combinations around the edge of the penalty area. Those are exceptional qualities, genuinely elite. But against this specific Manchester City defensive structure, missing its primary mobile defensive cover on the left side, Eze's profile may actually create a different and more immediately disruptive problem. Here is where things get genuinely interesting. Isak plays facing forward. His instinct is to receive the ball and drive directly at defenders rather than receive, hold and recycle against a City defensive line that is organisationally compromised and missing its most physically mobile presence. A forward-facing number 10 who can turn in tight spaces and accelerate at the back four forces a reaction that a possession-based number 10 simply does not. You cannot drop into a passive shape and absorb Eze the way you can absorb a player who wants to slow the game down. And we saw it on Tuesday. That goal against Leverkusen was not luck. That was the composure and forward instinct of a player ready for exactly these kinds of moments. This is not a case of making the best of an injury. It is a genuine tactical argument that Isak in this specific fixture against this specific opponent offers something different from Odegaard, and that different thing may be precisely what Arsenal need tomorrow. Over on the right side, Bukayo Saka faces a City defensive arrangement that remains genuinely unresolved. With Guardiola absent, whoever fills that position, and there is real uncertainty about the final defensive configuration Guardiola selects, will be facing Saka without the physical quality and positional intelligence that Guardiola would normally provide. Saka's movement between underlapping and overlapping runs, his ability to either go to the byline or cut inside, it creates constant positional dilemmas for any fullback or covering centre-back. In the 5-1, he was involved in virtually every dangerous moment Arsenal created. City have had weeks to prepare solutions, but preparing a solution on paper and executing it with a makeshift defensive unit at Wembley are two completely different things. And there is one more thing about City's preparation for tomorrow that I think changes the entire picture. This is the part that shifted my view most significantly this week, and I want to explain it carefully because it is being almost completely ignored. Manchester City played a Champions League second leg on Wednesday night. They were 3 goals down from the first leg. They were eliminated before kickoff. Guardiola rotated. Rodri, Haaland and Reinders were rested. But those players were still present, still in the stadium, still part of a squad that collectively experienced the atmosphere of a dead rubber following a heavy first leg defeat to Real Madrid. The players who did play and the squad members watching from the bench spent 90 minutes in an environment of managed disappointment. And now Guardiola is asking them to flip that completely. To come into Wembley less than 72 hours later with full intensity, full belief and the genuine conviction that they can win a major final. The physical recovery for the rested players is manageable. That is straightforward. But the emotional reset, that is a different question entirely. And I think it is a question that does not have a clean answer, even for a squad as experienced as City's. Honestly, when I mapped out the timeline properly, the result on Wednesday, the travel, the preparation window, the emotional weight of that exit, this surprised me more than almost anything else in my research this week. 72 hours is a very short bridge between devastation and belief. Arsenal, by contrast, played a controlled and professional 2-0 win. They did exactly what the occasion required. Isak scored a brilliant goal. The team progressed to the quarter-finals, feeling good about themselves. They came home carrying winning momentum. That distinction in the psychological state of both squads heading into Wembley tomorrow is real, and it is almost entirely absent from the mainstream conversation around this final. Now look, I want to be direct about something here because this matters. And as someone who watches this club closely and understands what this moment means to supporters, I feel it too. Arsenal have lost more League Cup finals than any other club in English football history, 6 defeats in previous finals. This is Arteta's first opportunity to change that record. And while I have spent most of this video laying out why the structural advantages sit with Arsenal, I would be doing you a disservice as an analyst if I did not acknowledge what that history tells us. Wembley is a specific environment. Cup finals carry a specific tension that no other game quite replicates, and the ability to execute your tactical system under that pressure, not Premier League pressure, not Champions League group stage pressure, but the pressure of a single final with no second leg and no margin for error is a skill that has to be demonstrated, not assumed. Arsenal have the better squad for tomorrow. They have the structural advantages. They have the momentum, but they still have to go out and prove it across 90 minutes. Something important needs to be said here, and we will come back to it in the final section because it reframes the entire stakes of what tomorrow actually means. That is the honest analytical position. The case for Arsenal winning is strong and it is evidence-based, but football at Wembley in a cup final does not always follow the evidence-based case. Every single person watching tomorrow already knows that feeling. The nervousness in the first 20 minutes, the tension when City win a free kick near the edge of the box, the collective held breath when Haaland gets the ball with his back to goal inside the area. We have all been there with this club, and that feeling is real and it is legitimate, and it does not disappear just because the analytical picture looks favourable. Guardiola is still Guardiola. He has won this competition more times than any other manager in history. He will make adjustments at half-time that will require Arsenal to respond. He will find something in the game to exploit, and Arsenal's ability to manage those moments when City are pressing, when the game is level late, when the tension peaks, that composure and collective discipline is ultimately what will separate the two sides. But here is the bigger picture point, and this is where the season context makes tomorrow feel like something genuinely different from any other game. A trophy tomorrow does not change the points tally, it does not alter the Champions League bracket, it does not suddenly make this squad more talented than it already demonstrably is, but it does something important that sits outside the numbers. It removes a specific narrative that has followed Arteta's Arsenal for 3 years now. The idea that this group of players, as talented as they clearly are, cannot produce when the absolute maximum is demanded in a single game, on the biggest stage. That narrative is not entirely fair to them. This squad has grown significantly and the evidence is substantial. But narratives have weight in football. They influence how players are perceived externally, how transfer targets assess the club, how young players understand the group's identity and what it is capable of. Winning at Wembley tomorrow buries that narrative permanently. And I think every supporter watching this already feels the weight of what that would mean. And if Arsenal lose, the league lead holds, the Champions League quarter-final remains, none of the structural work of this season is undone. But the questions around Arteta's ability to deliver in a single decisive game are reopened. And reopened questions, even unfair ones, create noise. Nobody wants that heading into the most promising Arsenal stretch run in 20 years. For Manchester City, the stakes are even more starkly defined. A win here is the difference between a season that ends with some evidence of resilience and a season that becomes a clear marker of structural decline. If City win tomorrow, Guardiola has something to point to. The conversation around his future shifts. The summer recruitment happens in a different atmosphere. If City lose, the question is not just about tomorrow's result. It is about what this era of City football is becoming as its grip on English football begins to loosen. And that brings me to the conclusion. And the one thought I want to leave you with, because I think it is the sharpest way to understand what tomorrow is actually testing. The way most people are framing tomorrow's final, it is being treated as effectively 50-50. A coin flip, a Wembley occasion where form counts for nothing and anything can happen. And while I understand why that framing exists, because Wembley does change things, and City in a final with Guardiola in the dugout are never to be dismissed, I think that framing is analytically lazy. The structural weight in this fixture sits clearly on Arsenal's side. Their most dangerous weapon directly exploits City's most significant personnel absence. Their psychological state coming in is demonstrably stronger. Their system has been tested and refined across a full season of elite competition, and crucially, the pressure dynamic runs in Arsenal's favour. The real question of tomorrow is not whether Arsenal can win, it is whether this Arsenal squad on the day that matters most will show the composure and clinical execution to turn structural advantage into an actual result on the pitch. That is the test. That is what Sunday at Wembley is really about. And honestly, based on everything this group has shown over the last 9 months, the consistency, the growth, the belief they have built in the biggest moments, I believe they are equipped to pass it. But here is what I want to know from you, because I have given you my reading of this fixture in full, and I am genuinely curious where you are sitting with it. Do you think Eze starting in place of Odegaard is a genuine tactical upgrade for this specific match, or does it concern you going into a final? And what is your honest biggest worry about tomorrow? Is it the Wembley occasion itself? Is it Haaland on a fresh pair of legs? Or is it something else entirely? Drop it in the comments. Tell me exactly how you are feeling about this one. I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know whether your reading of this final match is mine or whether you think I have got something wrong. Tomorrow, 4:30, Wembley. Let us find out together.